The man who moved into my life while I was at work. I came home from a 2-week work trip to find a man I had never met sitting on my couch, eating my food with his clothes hanging in my closet. He told me very calmly that he lived there. He had a lease agreement with my signature on it. I had never signed anything. This is what happened next, and why it took 6 weeks to get my apartment back. I travel for work 4 to 6 times a year. Most trips are 1 to 2 weeks. My apartment sits empty during those periods. I have a neighbor with a spare key for emergencies, and my mail holds at the post office. Nothing complicated. In hindsight, my travel schedule was publicly visible. I had an out-of-office reply on my email, a LinkedIn profile that showed my role involved regional travel, and a neighbor who, without malicious intent, had mentioned to someone asking that I was often away. The man on my couch, I'll call him Ray, had apparently been watching the building for weeks before I left. He knew my schedule. He knew my apartment number. And he had obtained, through means that are still not entirely clear, a forged lease agreement that listed him as a subtenant with my supposed written permission. The document looked real. It had my name, my unit number, the building address, a forged signature. He had presented it to my landlord's property management company as documentation of an informal sublet arrangement. They had not verified it. They had simply filed it. When I called the police that night, I expected them to remove him immediately. That is not what happened. The officer who arrived explained that because Ray had a document, even a forged one claiming tenancy, and because he had been in the apartment for 2 weeks and had personal belongings present, this was classified as a civil dispute, not a criminal matter. I could not remove him. I would need to go through the formal eviction process. I stood in my own hallway while this man slept in my bedroom. I slept at a colleague's apartment that night. Over the following days, I worked with a lawyer to file an emergency unlawful detainer action. Ray, meanwhile, was not sitting still. He changed the Wi-Fi password. He received packages at my address. He told neighbors he was house-sitting long-term. He was establishing a paper trail of occupancy. The property management company, when confronted with the forged document, was defensive rather than helpful. They were worried about their own liability and were slow to cooperate. My landlord, to his credit, was horrified and tried to intervene directly. Ray told him the lease agreement gave him rights, and that any interference would result in legal action. It took a forensic document examiner, which I paid for, to formally confirm the lease was forged. That report, combined with my landlord's testimony, allowed the judge to fast-track the eviction. Ray was removed on day 43. After he left, I went through my apartment carefully. Several things were missing: a laptop, a camera, some cash I kept in a drawer. But more disturbing was what was found. Behind a panel in the bathroom cabinet, investigators found a notebook. In it were what appeared to be notes on at least 8 other apartments in the city: unit numbers, tenant names, travel schedules, notes on building security. My apartment was number 6 on the list. 2 others on that list were contacted. Both confirmed they had experienced similar incidents. One had been successfully squatted for over 3 months before the tenant returned. Police confirmed Ray had a history of this across multiple cities. His method was always the same: identify frequent travelers, forge sublet documentation, exploit the gap between criminal and civil law that protects even fraudulent tenants from immediate removal. He had never been successfully prosecuted because most victims, exhausted by the process, chose not to pursue charges. I pursued charges. He was convicted of forgery and fraud. He served 4 months. I tell this story because the civil versus criminal distinction in tenancy law is something almost no one knows about until it happens to them. Now you know. If you travel frequently, tell as few people as possible. Set your out of office to give no specific dates. Ask your property manager what documentation they accept for sublet arrangements and whether they verify signatures. And if this ever happens to you, call a lawyer before you call the police, because the law in this situation is not on your side in the way you expect. Subscribe for more stories. I have one next week that starts exactly the same way this one does, with a stranger acting like they belong somewhere they don't. See you then.